What's up folks, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about the top 5 things that I learned from a metal welder. Let's roll the intro. That's right, so if you didn't already know, I host a podcast called the She Who Dares Wins. Yep, that's it. She Who Dares Wins podcast, where I interview women from all over the world in lots of different industries that are typically male dominated. I started off interviewing women that were in construction and trades, and now I'm kind of moving on to different areas such as like farming and automotive. Now, as it's She Who Dares Wins, I do typically focus on women and their stories. However, if you're a guy, stick around because I think you can learn so much from them too. I've been inspired by their journeys, by like the little nuggets of information they've given to me. A lot of them have been in industry for over 10 and 15 years, and they talk about, you know, how they got a job, things that they've overcome, and it's just been really incredible. So for this channel, I thought it would be super if I started a little feature, which would be the podcast feature, and I will look at the top things that I've kind of taken away from each podcast and then feed those back through to you guys. I've also started doing video podcasts, so I can actually interrupt each little video with little snippets from the podcast, and then if you're interested, you can go ahead. I'll put a link down in the description and you can go ahead and listen to the whole podcast. We're available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Podbean. Again, I'll link those down in the descriptions. But before we get right into the nitty gritty of things, I'll do what I did last week, which is put a few timestamps here. So if you want to jump ahead to any of the top 5 tips, you can go ahead and do that. So today's video is all about Barbie. So Barbie is a metal welder from the USA, and I got to interview her a few weeks ago. Now, this podcast really resonated with me because there were so many things that she talked about on her journey that were just incredible and really helpful. So her story is incredible. She overcame so much to become a welder, and then moving on from welder to become a metal artist. She now has her own YouTube channel. She goes all over the country teaching people how to weld, and she's published a book. There's literally nothing this woman hasn't done. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The first tip that I learned from Barbie was that you really should follow your creative passion no matter what the circumstances. Barbie shared her story about how even though she felt a gut instinct that she wanted to do welding and had never had any experience before, there were a lot of things telling her that she shouldn't do it. One of them being finances, and the other one, family members and people close by that just didn't believe that she should do that or that there would be a career in it. And luckily enough, she ignored all that information and pushed forward and ended up carving out an amazing career for herself. So that's tip number 1, folks, is that you really should follow your creative gut and your instinct, whether that be in a more mainstream career path or whether it be in a creative one. If your gut instinct is telling you, you have to try it out and you have to follow it, because otherwise you're just never going to know. Let's hear a little bit about that journey now.
My husband was totally against it. He thought it was a waste of time. He thought it was a stupid idea and that it really just wasn't, it didn't make any sense. But I made a defiant decision. At the time I was working and he really wasn't supporting the family financially. So I said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And against his wishes, I went and I just, I was already working. I just worked harder and saved what little I could, and eventually was able to take the course. I did 6 months, night courses after work every night. 2 days a week for 6 months I took the course, and I already knew I was going to love to weld before I even started. And like the first day of class, it was like this magnificent win for me.
Tip number 2 that I took away from this podcast is to stop working out of fear. This one really hit home with me, especially when it comes to like YouTube videos. So Barbie talks about a certain point in her career where she started to make money, and she was enjoying welding, but she was aware that she had gone through a lot of financial difficulties to get where she had got to. And she realized that producing just certain types of art, she was able to generate revenue. But the problem was she started to get stuck in a rut and was producing for the money rather than for the creative output. And she just lost the love for it a little bit at that point in time. And I think it was harsh realization that you need to be working towards creative progress. And when you work purely on a financial basis, you can start to lose your passion, and the creative side of things just tend to go away. And after all, that's what's got her started on her journey. So it was something she needed to reconnect to. So let's hear what she said about that.
It reminded me what I was doing. I was not making art to make money. I was making art because it was my sole mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so it flipped a switch in me. I realized why I was here. And it wasn't, it was about being in love with what I was doing. And what happened was I sold a couple things at that show. I made some amazing friends that were artists. And I went back into my shop and I just started making stuff that I love.
Okay, this one's a really good one, is you have to wing it at some point. It doesn't matter how many books you read from entrepreneurs, from like Richard Branson, Tim Ferriss. I've listened to thousands of podcasts over the years, and the one thing that resonates and always hits home is that every one of them has winged it at some point in their life. And what do I mean by winged it? Well, faked it till they made it. You're not going to know everything from the outset. So sometimes you have to tell a little white lie, and you have to push yourself forward and believe in yourself and wing it. And Barbie did that. It was a way of her to get into shows, to do welding. She went around and spoke to some people and explained what she'd done before, some of it truth, some of it not. But by winging it a little bit, she was able to push forward. And it's really interesting to me. So let's hear about winging it.
I also went back home and I went around to these local stores, and I was like, hey, I just started BSing my way into some stuff. I'm like, hey, I'm creating this live art welding show. And I said, I need welding curtains because that's how people will protect their eyes. Like, I'll put the welding curtains around me. It'll protect them from the arcs and sparks. They can watch what I'm creating. And I'm like, and I'll put your banner for your store up behind me and I'll promote you. And it's this happy win-win. And I went to like 19 places and they all thought I was bat crap crazy. And the 20th place I went to was Welding Supply Shop down in Elmira, New York. And I started talking to him about it. And before I even had a chance to get all the words out, the guy's like, hell yeah, what do you need?
Okay, number 4 is never say never and never stop exploring your craft. Yeah, got there. So Barbie explains that she didn't have any interest at all in teaching metal welding or sculpting art. And then one day someone convinced her to do a class, and I'll let her explain what happened.
I go out there, she sets up these classes, take these 8 women and I teach them how to weld metal art in 4 hours. And during that class, I watched this one woman take my idea and make it amazing. And I watched her get it. I watched her get that look that guy gave his art. Mm-hmm. I watched her get it. And I showed her how to do that. And that right there, I was just like, oh man. I went home and just went on fire. I'm like, who else can I teach? And it just like, it sparked that love of teaching for me, because I'm like, if she can learn and do that, and if I can teach her how to have that moment, or if I can teach her if I can teach her the skills for her to get that moment for herself, is what it really is. I'm like, how else? And so like I came home and my YouTube I came home and poured my time into YouTube, because I'm just like, how else can I showcase how to do this stuff?
So you see, from just exploring everything, Barbie then realised that she loved teaching. And by being able to pass on her skills and her craft to another female or male, that gave her such great enjoyment. And it's something she never even considered doing, but just by giving it a go, she now incorporates that, and she now has a fantastic YouTube channel, and she's written a book, and so many people are benefiting from her work. And it's such a positive impact, and you can really see how that has affected her. And it's been important to me as well, by sharing my stories online, and being able to teach apprentice engineers has been incredible. So yeah, think about teaching, but if someone asks you to do something, never say never and explore everything. Number 5, this is a good one to finish with. So you must appreciate your work, and you must give credit for your craft. So what did she mean by this? Well, there's several occasions throughout the podcast where she gets really emotional and she talks about the passion of the work and looking back at something she's created and just being so excited by that. I think the first instance that happened was a show that she did with a young guy, and he looked back and saw what he created, and you could tell he was physically affected by what he'd done and super proud. And then she talks about how she went through this and how she sees others go through it when she teaches them. And I think it's really important. Sometimes we go through life, in whether it be in a career or a hobby, and we do things and we get things done and then we move on to the next one, and we never actually take time to appreciate how far we've come. Let's hear a little bit about one of those situations.
And I'm walking around this giant circle of people creating, and I see this one guy who is sculpting, and they've got like all the safety gear on. He's got his headsets on, and they're listening to music, and like this guy is like creating, and he pauses for a second and takes a step back from the sculpture that he was making, and he's bopping his head with the music and just kind of like in the middle, in the moment. And he looks at what he's done, and I watch this from across the field. He looks at what he's done and he nods at his art and he smiles. And it's a very private moment that I normally have in my shop of when I'm creating something, there's this moment where you look at what you've done and you're just like, fuck yeah. Like I did that.
All right, folks, I wanted to keep this short and simple. Like I said, if you want to listen to the full podcast, please go ahead, follow the links down below. It's She Who Dares Wins. There's just so much to learn from this incredible craft and trade. Metal welding artists are badass. The stuff she creates is immense. I will also link down below all of her links to her YouTube and Instagram. There'll be so much more in the podcast that you can take away, so many lessons that you can learn. But for me, these are my 5 top tips. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe, click that notification button, and I'll be back with another video soon.